Well, if the 90-degree temperatures didn't clue you in, it's summer. But that doesn't mean we're done talking about the Seawolves. Taryn Ohlmiller is on tonight on the sports section. And welcome to the sports section. Long Island's longest-running call-in sports program, but thanks to COVID, the callers are the hosts, at least for now. That may change soon. In any case, I'm Matt Mankiewich. Ken Fermin is here with me, and also with us, superstar women's lacrosse player from the Stony Brook Seawolves, and I don't exaggerate when calling her that. Taryn Ohlmiller is with us and will be joining us to talk a little bit about the women's lacrosse season and what it's been like to be an athlete during COVID. I mean, we're going to have a lot of questions about that as well. So, guys, I'm going to roll the ball out and Ken, get it rolling.
Yeah, so first off, our spotlight showcase here with Taryn Ohlmiller. Thank you so much for joining us here right there.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. You know, we, especially in these feature segments, you know, we think superstar athlete and someone who, you know, everyone, you know, really wants to listen to, get that insight from. It's really hard pressed to find anyone better, especially when it comes to women's lacrosse, not only in Stony Brook, but not only on the island, but in the nation than Taryn Ohlmiller. Of course, one half of the Ohlmiller sisters, older sister Kylie, you know, two of you, you know, it goes hand in hand, especially in the NCAA in terms of the records you two produce night in, night out for lacrosse. So first things first, just how's it going there?
Sorry, what'd you say?
The first things first, how's it going?
Good. I'm just hanging out. Crazy that everything's over for me. You know, I was talking about it before. It's just completely different for me now, just being done with lacrosse and everything. So I'm just looking on to the next step.
Yeah, it's, again, unprecedented territory where for you, you've been doing this since at least high school, probably even before high school. Is that correct?
Yeah, I started playing lacrosse in, I would say, like first or second grade. And I started doing like travel tournaments and everything in third grade. So I've been lacrosse nonstop since I was about 10 years old. So yeah, it's definitely a little different for me right now and something I have to start getting used to.
Yeah.
I have an interesting question here, though. Taryn, I know that when you first start out playing lacrosse, boys and girls play together, which means it's the men's game. At what point in your lacrosse career do you graduate to the women's game?
I actually never played men's or boys lacrosse.
Really?
When I was in elementary school, everything was just girls lacrosse then. So it was never that for me. I'm lucky that my town had a bunch of different PAL teams for us to play on. You know, soccer was the normal normal sport to start with. I really didn't like soccer at all. So once I tried lacrosse, you know, it was a done deal for me.
Yeah, and it's interesting because, again, a lot of our out-of-state listeners listen in like, well, that's crazy. You know, starting in first grade, as you said, having that women's program already instilled, because for a lot of other places, especially outside of Long Island, you know, there really aren't a lot of opportunities like that, especially for, you know, younger women, players trying to get into this game. So how important was it for you, and what did you really take from, again, having those programs there at a young age and really getting a quick grasp on the game of lacrosse?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I was super lucky to be able to just start playing girls lacrosse. Definitely on Long Island, it's a lot different than a lot of other places. So, you know, I've been very lucky to be able to, you know, start playing at such a young age. And, you know, as I got a little bit older, I started into middle school, there started becoming more college teams that I could look up to and stuff like that. So, you know, I was definitely very grateful for that. And I think that definitely helped me become a better player in the long run.
Right. Now, you alluded to it, but you discussed other sports as well. And you said you weren't really interested in soccer, but you are a triathlete, especially in high school, of course, playing basketball, and volleyball alongside lacrosse. So what was that like? Balancing playing three different sports, training for three different sports at the same time, especially playing two at the same time with basketball and volleyball. And then also of those three, choosing lacrosse as the one you wish to specialize the most in.
Yeah, when I was in high school, I played volleyball, basketball, and lacrosse. So the 3 different seasons, I had a different sport to play. And I think that was honestly better for me as an athlete, getting to work with other coaches and learning different types of skills and stuff like that. I think that made me a better lacrosse player in the long run. I think that just all the different, you learn so many different things from volleyball, and then you learn other things from basketball. And I think just learning that time management, being able to split the 3, really helped me too once I got into college. But yeah, playing 3 sports was awesome for me. And, like if I didn't play lacrosse, I would have played basketball. If I didn't play basketball, I would have played volleyball. So, I really enjoyed playing a lot of those sports. And I think that made me a better athlete in the long run.
A lot of coaches will tell you that there are a lot of similarities between lacrosse and basketball, especially with defenses. Did you notice that too as you went back and forth between the two?
Yeah, definitely. Like you say, a lot of coaches say that, basketball and lacrosse are pretty similar. It's just my travel coach actually used to always say to us, "It's basketball with sticks, lady. It's basketball with sticks." So yeah, it was just basically, with the defense, just getting low, moving your feet, just kind of like knowing where you are on the court. Same thing as when you're playing lacrosse. Obviously, I never really was a defensive player, but in high school, I played midfield, so I did play defense a little bit.
Wow.
And I definitely think that translated for me, that basketball right into lacrosse. It was always just back and forth.
No, I agree, and it really showed on the field as well. First off, you, especially Alec Kennedy, who we'll touch on further in a few minutes, but you two were always, it seemed like, the fastest players on the field, number one. It was like, never seemed like you two were tired. And again, the playmaking ability, especially from you, I have to assume you're a point guard when you're playing basketball, right? Because your playmaking ability and your passing ability especially was hands down the most incredible, at the very least I've seen in the NCAA throughout your career.
Well, thank you for that. I actually was not a point guard in basketball. I was more of like a shooting guard. I just shot threes all the time. But
you'd fit right in the PL, 2-point goals.
I was actually pretty good at basketball. I actually scored my 1,000 points in basketball, which was pretty crazy.
That's awesome. Yeah, and I believe you're all county as well, if that's correct, Bryce.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was pretty fun, but yeah, definitely, like you said, it always just, everything would just translate onto the lacrosse field for me. And, Kylie was actually a point guard when she played basketball.
Wow.
So she was more of she could not shoot at all. She always had to pass the ball.
Well, speaking of her, I think the results really translated, again, whether it was on the hardwood or on the field. And then you two were just absolutely incredible in your time in Stony Brook as well. What impact did playing alongside Kylie in high school and as well as in college have on you, not only coming to Stony Brook, but also forming the type of player you would become in those sports?
Yeah, I mean, being able to play with Kylie, and we played all 3 sports in high school together, volleyball, basketball, and lacrosse. And, just everything in the backyard. She's my only sibling, so everything that we did sports-wise was together. Just playing everything. We've probably played every single sport in the backyard together when we were growing up. So I think that definitely translated once we got into high school. And when she decided that she wanted to go to Stony Brook, I mean, that was super awesome for her. And in the beginning, I definitely wanted to, have my own journey once I got to college. But, once I started seeing her get to Stony Brook and, they started changing the game and becoming like up top in the NCAA. So that's when I kind of decided that I wanted to go to college with her too. But I think that, her having her first 2 years by herself and then us being together for 2 years and then me getting my own 2 years at the end, I think that's what made it even better for us because we both had our own like individual times, but, we were able to, come together too.
Absolutely.
It became the subject of a feature story, but you, Kylie, Allie, several of Stony Brook players seem to be the common thread that in many cases, not all, that you were overlooked by recruiters for a lot of the big traditional schools, which gave Joe Spolina the perfect opportunity to sneak in and bring you guys over to Stony Brook. Was that simply the case with both of you? Because I'm sure you were making headlines in high school. I'm sure you had the attention of some of the top schools.
Yeah. So when I was younger, I always wanted to go to like the top schools like Florida, Syracuse,
Duke.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but once I started getting recruited, I wasn't getting really those high looks either. Definitely, it's the same old story. All of us were getting under recruited, and then I initially committed to play at Towson, and so I committed when I was in 10th grade to go to Towson because I, thought I wanted a different experience than what Kylie was having. But once she started playing at Stony Brook and I was going to every home game and seeing that everyone could come to all of our games all the time and 30 minutes away from home, like that kind of just like switched in my head that, I think I should go to Stony Brook too. But yeah, so once we all got there, it was kind of that same old story that Spolina always talks about, under recruited players, just we have a different chip on our shoulder. I think that's what pushes a lot of us to want to be the best and prove a lot of people wrong.
Well,
Now you have to wonder. Yeah, I wonder, though, if I'm sure somebody has figured out if Joe Spolina is snooping around, there must be somebody good around there, so he's looking for. Because it has continued up to this point that he's built this team together, and all of you have emerged as not just, Seawolves Hall of Famers, if you want to say that, because I'm sure you are shoo-ins for it when your time comes, but nationally recognized top players, Tewaaraton candidates, the works. And from virtual low known as a freshman to that lofty level, that's quite a trip.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely something that, he always talks about. Rather than recruiting the best players, the best lacrosse players, really recruiting the people that are going to work their ass off and bring their lunch pail to practice every day. And, I think he really is the type of coach that likes to mold those type of players into great lacrosse players. And I think the past couple of years, he's definitely been able to do that for a lot of us.
Yeah, absolutely. And, with that, we take conversation kind of reflecting on this season, because that's a great example. Seeing a lot of those young names. That's what we here at Station label kind of the future of the franchise, quote unquote. Having those new players on the attack or midfield, like Jaden Hampel, Ellie Macera, defensively as well, seeing Cameron Halso in her second or the first full season in between the pipes as a Seawolf, alongside Haley Hunt, who got a lot of playing time this season. So with all of that new talent there, what did you really notice the team was like heading into this season compared to prior teams?
Yeah, I mean, every year we get a bunch of really good freshmen. But I think this year was a little extra special. We had a bunch of people that were just, ready to work hard every day and, just buy into what we were doing in practice every day. And, we always talk about, just at practice, just taking a look at those upperclassmen. You know, like someone's in your spot, just learn from them, watch them, and like you're not going to come in as a freshman and just completely like turn everything around. But I think that those players really took on that role that they were able to watch in the fall, especially in a crazy, unprecedented year like this one.
Oh yeah,
they were able to really, you know, take their time and figure things out. And I think that, you know, the first couple of games, they were still figuring things out, but towards the end of the season, you know, a bunch of them, like Ellie Massera, Jaden Hampel, a bunch of them really played a big role for us. And I think that was super helpful.
Absolutely. And I think calling it a treat, as you said, is the right word, because for a short while there, we didn't even know what the future held. Of course, in March, everything shuts down. You know, your future is kind of in limbo as John Helbron and the rest of the NCAA tries to figure out what to do with all these seniors whose seasons just got cut short. Thankfully, they allow blanket waivers, and you were the first significant athlete, especially here. I believe you were the first student athlete here at Stony Brook to say, yeah, I'm coming back. I'm using that blanket waiver. So how important was it for you to return for that final season?
Yeah, I mean, if we take it all the way back to March of last year when, you know, our season just got taken from us, that was something we never expected. And, you know, just waiting those couple of weeks to find out if the NCAA was going to grant us an extra year was just like complete anxiety. And kind of just like, you know, it was just a bunch of unknown for a lot of us. You know, for me, it did take me a little bit longer to make the decision because I was ready to go to grad school the next year. You know, I kind of just thought that year was really my last year of lacrosse. But, you know, once I started really thinking about it, I was like, there's no way that I could not be on this team next year if I'm able to. You know, it was just like, once I started thinking of it that way, like, there's no way if my friends that are in my grade are playing in these games and I'm not, like, there's no way that I can be like not be a part of it. And, you know, just like we just ended off on such a like bad way last year with COVID and everything that like I would totally regret if I didn't go back. So once I was able to make that decision, you know, like you said, I think Allie made that decision right away, and then I was right after her. You know,
and that really kickstarted, you know, not only for the lacrosse program, but for I think every spring program. So after that, a lot of baseball recruits announced they would return, football as well. And I feel like the two of you were the big catalyst in that happening for Stony Brook.
Yeah, we definitely. It was a tough decision, but it was also a super easy decision to make because, you know, it was just, there's no way I could end my lacrosse career that way. So I think that once a lot of people started, you know, across all the other teams, they were thinking the same thing. I really don't think there was many people that decided not to come back, you know, on a bunch of teams. And, you know, we're super grateful that, you know, Sean Hilbro and our athletic department, they were able to give us this opportunity and let us come back and give us all these opportunities. So, you know, I'm super grateful for that. And, you know, it's been a really great extra year.
Absolutely. And I mean, we, especially here at the station, we're so grateful too, just to see you back on the field again. And so many incredible highlights to go through. And I think the one we're going to focus on now is Senior Day. I'll go back to May 1st against UMBC. I mean, arguably the greatest, not one of the greatest single game efforts I've seen really been broadcasted, especially here on WUSB. You know, an eight goal afternoon gets you over the 200 goal mark for your career. What was that like heading into that day? During the game and afterwards?
Yeah, Senior Day was so special, especially because, you know, last year we didn't know if we were ever going to get one. You know, even this year we didn't know if it was going to be, our parents going to be allowed at the game, or is it going to be the same? Are we going to be able to have fans? Like, is Senior Day going to be as special? But, you know, our team and our parents and the athletic department made it like incredibly special for us. And just being able to go in there and, have one of the last games playing in that stadium and that way, it was really special. And, the team made it really special for a lot of us. So.
And you especially, as I said, 8 goals. Was that planned? Was there a strategy where it was like, okay, we know Taryn only needs 7 goals to crack 200, so we're going to focus the playmaking on her? Or was that something where you just had the hot stick and rode it?
I honestly don't think any of us even knew that was a thing. So I didn't know I was even close to that mark, but, it was just one of those days where, my teammates were getting me the ball, and, there's a lot of times where, I would be marked off, or it would be other people's. It just happened to be I was open a lot that day. But people were really getting me the ball, but it was just vice versa. So, my awesome teammates were ones for that one.
Yeah, and after that as well, that really, Matt and I agree. That was, you were already on a roll at that point in the season, but that really was the kickstart for this Stony Brook team as they really rolled through in the America East tournament, beating UMBC again. You were obviously a big factor in that, as well as topping New Albany for, I think, the 7th straight season to win the conference title, and from there dominating against, I believe, Towson and Rutgers. So, with that, with all of that, how are you able to, I guess, ride that momentum into the NCAA tournament, as well as really dominate against teams who strategized really hard to stop you in particular?
Yeah, I mean, we were absolutely playing our best lacrosse in May, and, that's what any team wants, really. Like I said before, talking about those freshmen and those younger players, even the sophomores that they only got in 5 games last year, so they didn't really have that much experience. So just having those first 10, 12 games, just, getting everyone into the swing of things. And we were playing the best that we've played all year in that UMBC game, America East Championship, all that. So I think just, riding off of that in practice all week after those games, like each day we were just getting better. And I think that, that was just the mindset going into that.
Now, one of the incredible things, especially for you in particular, is that, for most people, an 8-goal afternoon is maybe the career highlight of, is the career highlight. Maybe they only get, one of those in their career during the 4 or 5 seasons. But you followed that up a few weeks later against Rutgers with 12 points, which is the most for a single game in the postseason, with Katie Rowan Thompson, who you battled a lot against New Albany. So could you take us kind of through your kind of your mindset on that day against Rutgers, where you were just finding everyone and finding the back of the net?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, we were going into that game like any game. It was a faceless opponent. We didn't know that much about Rutgers, but we did know that they were having a great year, one of their best years yet. So we were just preparing for them the whole time. But just getting into that game, I think that was the best game that our team has played all year. And I just think that was just a team effort, just all across the board. Our defense played amazing that game. Cam played amazing in goal. Our middies, we were winning draws. It was just a huge team effort, and just kind of the icing on the cake for my last game ever playing in that stadium. So that was really great.
Yeah, and one thing I don't necessarily say you're going to take with you, but, it's going to be different the next time there's a Stony Brook Women's Lacrosse game. Obviously, you won't be, and Alec Kenny won't be there on the field, but I want to talk about that iconic 5-2 motion offense. Really just the motion offense Coach Spalina is known for on the attack, where he can really slot in anyone, anywhere, around the key, top the perimeter, and really, that's where the playmaking is. So could you describe your role there? Because a lot of times you were set right by the cage, getting cutting a player teammate in, whether that was Hampel or Ali Kennedy or Kaylee Huff or et cetera.
Yeah, so as an attacker, I play mostly behind the net, kind of like a crease attacker, as they call it. So basically, I like to think that I'm better at, my passing abilities. So I think it's just great when my teammates are just cutting nonstop and I have the ball back there. They make it so easy for me. So yeah, it's just that offense. We don't really have. He doesn't put any plays in really. It's just free flowing offense, just dodge and pass, and we just want to keep the ball moving as quickly as possible. And when we just have people that are able to buy into that offense and just keep things quick, and that's just the type of offense that we're looking for. And those last couple of games, I think that we really put that out there.
Agreed.
But then we come to North Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Team you started the year against, and now the team that is the main obstacle to the Final Four. What was the preparation like for this team, having faced them before? You went through the video, you went through everything, you were prepared, you were ready to go. What were you expecting from them the second time around?
I mean, we were expecting to play the best team in the nation. They were number one all year, and we did play them our first game. But like I said, we were playing our best lacrosse in May. So kind of just like how we prepare for every game. It's all about us mentality. It's not really about who we're playing against. But obviously, going into playing the best team in the country, we have to be able to prepare for that. So I think that, we had to think about our depth for that game because we knew that they were going to have people coming off the bench nonstop, midfielders. It was going to be super hot. It ended up being 90, 92 degrees that day.
Wow.
Yeah. So
I was going to say, and you compare that to games at Laval, where for a lot of the season, it was sub 50s. Maybe humidity played a factor to raise it up to maybe feel like 75. But that was really the first game, or maybe second after that Rutgers game, where it felt that hot, I'm assuming.
Yeah, and, that's something that we're definitely not used to. Definitely the hottest weekend of the year for them down there, too. But, like I said, they've got plenty of people coming off the bench, so we wanted to prepare for, our middies were going to get tired, so we needed, backup middies to be ready to play. And, I think that we executed that pretty well. It just didn't end in our court at the end of the game.
Yeah, and looking back at it, it was close, obviously, the entire game. And really, at the middle 30 minutes, Stony Brook was ahead, and you were responsible for the last two goals they scored. When you notice that scoring run, because Coach Spino loves talking about stacking goals. We brought it up all broadcasts. You got to stack runs, stack goals, and set runs. So, when you noticed that run was starting to close down, what were you kind of telling your teammates? How were you leading the team in that sense to try to keep it going?
Yeah, I mean, we're definitely a type of team that once we get momentum, we're just going to keep running with it. So, once our defense was playing sick that game. So, we were kind of just, their energy was bringing over to us and on the offensive end and vice versa. So it was kind of just, let's just keep doing what we're doing. We weren't really doing anything wrong, making any mistakes. We just wanted to keep rolling at that time and just kind of just get the ball as much as possible and just keep it away from them. So that was kind of our mindset then, because, like I said, when they get the ball, they're gonna put it in the back of the net. So we just wanted to have as much possession time as possible, which I did think worked in our favor for most of the game. And, those couple of runs really helped us out. And, our defense was making crazy amount of stops in that game too. So, it was just momentum from the bench, energy from the bench, everybody, defense and offense everyone was just hyping each other up. So, it was just energy all over the place.
Yeah, and again, that to me was the most entertaining, really up until the finals, the most entertaining game of the season, because while we obviously have praised you and Ali Kennedy as the 1-2 UNC had a great one too in Jamie Ortega and Katie Hodge the whole season. And, Ortega was the one who ultimately got that tying goal and really kicked off that run. But, even in that sense, there are a lot of similarities there with UNC and Stony Brook. And that's something where at the start of the season, especially after that loss, I don't believe Stony Brook got the respect that they were due because of how they performed that first game. But can you talk about the growth and achievements you saw in this team from that first meeting and that last meeting?
Definitely, yeah. I think, like I said, we were playing our best lacrosse in May, which is what everybody wants. But the growth that we made from that first game against North Carolina. I mean, obviously, it was the first game for us and them since March of the year before. So it was bound to be a messy kind of game. But like you said, that that was kind of a bummer for us. And then that loss also after that against Syracuse kind of just, I think made people look away from us for a little while. But, we had a bunch of games during the season that we were able to get those freshmen, those sophomores in to get that experience and, just kind of building everybody up as a team, kind of just worrying about us as a team and not really thinking about what anyone else had to think about us. That type of mentality definitely helped us grow. And just having everybody kind of buy into what we wanted to do, which was the goal of a national championship and just getting somewhere that we've never been before. So absolutely, I think that we grew crazy over those past couple of games, especially, and I think that we really ended on top, a really great place for our team.
Yeah, and for that game too, looking further in the future, UNC ended up getting knocked out in the semifinals to the eventual champion Boston Eagles in 11-10 was that score, and then they ended up facing Syracuse and beating them. So what was it watching kind of those semifinals game? How do you think Boston was able to succeed against a tough UNC team and against another great offense in Syracuse?
Yeah, I mean, watching that game was pretty tough because we wanted to be in that game. So it's hard watching games like that, but it's also kind of a learning experience too. I mean, it's tough for me because obviously our UNC game was my last game. But for our younger kids, just, watching that and just, it makes you want to be there. I was so jealous.
We were too. We wanted to be there for sure.
Yeah.
And Zachy's not here, but he also traveled to UNC for that game, man. He was so bummed. So just looking forward to the semifinals, finals. Stony Brook.
Yeah. But, just kind of watching it, BC just has an insane amount of threats on offense. And, it wasn't just their Charlotte North just scoring all their goals. It was every single person on offense was a threat. And, I think that's kind of how they beat their defense. And, and BC's defense too. They were locked down on Hogue and Ortega. So I think that, that really helped them out in the long run. But like I said, I wish we were the ones in that game.
Agreed. Yeah, there was.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, agreed. And especially with the Twirathon Awards, that one going to Charlotte North.
Yeah, definitely. She had an awesome year, so she definitely deserved that.
Yeah, and we speak too about Syracuse just because the big report coming out, reported by Inside Lacrosse just a few hours ago, with John Desko retiring on the men's side. The Syracuse women's head coach Gary Gates going to take over the men's team, leaving a hole on the women's side. What are your thoughts on that breaking news?
Yeah, that came out today. Gary Gate going over to the men's team, which was super surprising, especially since Syracuse lost in the national championship less than a week ago. So, or a week ago today. So I think that's a pretty quick turnaround. But it's also something that's not fully surprising because, that's Gary Gates' bread and butter. So, he definitely always wanted to be that coach of his old team. He made Syracuse men's lacrosse the team that they are. So it's definitely different. And I'm intrigued to find out who's going to be that next Syracuse girls coach.
Yeah, Matt and I were discussing it, and one of the names that came up amongst the top lacrosse analysts was, of course, Joe Scalina. And we know, how indebted he is to Stony Brook, how much Stony Brook is indebted to him. I think they respect whatever decision he makes. But what were your thoughts on that, where a lot of the top names from who people want to see fill that hole is the current Stony Brook women's coach?
Yeah, I've been seeing that a lot on Twitter. I do think that people are saying that because of his son Joey who's going to end up going to Syracuse in not next year, but the year after that. But it kind of just speaks to how, people have respect for him and they think that he is one of the best coaches. So I think that it's going to be crazy to find out what happens next for them. I did see that there were a bunch of other people's names being thrown around, like Michelle Tumalo, Kayla Trainer, all that. So I think it's going to be interesting to find out I'm sure they've already figured it out. It's just when they're going to announce it to the world. So
right. I'm a bit shocked we haven't seen either your name or Kylie's name thrown around there. That's something you've looked into, post playing career, you and Kylie, in terms of coaching collegially.
I mean, that would be pretty cool to do it together. I'm not sure what Kylie's plans are. She's definitely thriving with her lacrosse business right now.
Oh yeah.
But when she was coaching as a volunteer assistant coach at Stony Brook with us, she absolutely killed it, and she was a great coach for all of us. So I can definitely see her doing that in the future.
I mean, I can see a family tree building up here. You know how a lot of the top assistants, like Mike Krzyzewski's top assistants, all wind up in head coaching jobs? Why not? I mean, it'd be great for you. But I want to ask this question because this was something that we were reflecting about the day after your loss to North Carolina in the NCAA, that after coming back for the extra year, obviously you had your eyes on a much bigger prize. You came back to win it all. And the fact that you were not able to do that, how disappointing was that for you and everybody who came back?
Yeah, I mean, it's super disappointing for us every year that we lose in the last round. But every year it's kind of, the seniors or the people that are the most upset. And, it's not something that you really feel like until, you're there. So just even with that extra year coming back, a full another year of playing on this old body, I think it was even more just disappointing, and because that's what we were chasing my whole time that I was playing at Stony Brook. We were chasing a national championship, and even just getting to that Final Four, which is something that we haven't done yet. And, so many times we have been so close, which is, it's just so upsetting. And, especially after playing that number one team in the country of UNC, we tasted it. We had them beat for almost all of that game, and just those last couple of minutes really losing that game, I think that, it was kind of devastating. And just, like I said before, watching that Final Four game, I was so jealous and just really wish that, it was our Stony Brook team playing there, because I think we would have killed it, as a team. And just something that is really sad that we haven't gotten there before, but I'm super grateful that we were even able to make it so far in the NCAAs each year I was there, which was always a great experience for me.
Speaking of which, go back a couple of years, and that game against Maryland, where Allie gets 2 yellow cards. And compare that with this one. This one, I think you can be satisfied in that you left it out there. That one, again, I'm saying it from a reporter and a fan's point of view, I think you got shortchanged. But this one, I think you guys gave your best effort.
Yeah, that was it 2 years ago, 3 years ago when we played Maryland, and Allie got those 2 yellow cards right in the beginning of the game. And she wasn't able to play.
Allie did. Allie got the 2 yellow cards, right? Or was it you?
No, it was Allie.
It was Allie.
It was Allie. It was Allie. Okay. Okay, my memory's still good.
But yeah, that was a tough year too, because it wasn't. That was probably the first year that we didn't. My freshman and sophomore years, we lost by 1 in the Elite Eight to Maryland and then to Boston College, and so that was the first year that we kind of got beaten by a lot. But that year it did end up that Maryland did winning the national championship. But like I said, it's just every year is completely different, and just even being able to be in the NCAA tournament is just something that I've never, as a kid, probably never would have pictured that I would be able to do. So just being able to be a part of that is super cool for me.
Absolutely. And again, we really tip our hats to you because, again, you especially have overcome so many roadblocks. And, we don't want to get into it, but you've gone on record so many times about, again, the ACL injury that caused you to miss the latter round a couple seasons ago. And obviously, again, dealing with the pandemic as a senior, where, again, you were in limbo for a little bit, and then obviously having to come back and have to retrain after missing so long where you couldn't really do anything because everything was shut down. So, again, just testament to how hardworking you are. And again, as well, the program, Stony Brook, where they have so many roadblocks that they overcome, especially when it comes to recruiting and going up against those other power conferences and being able to show that they could take the punch and dish it too. So it's how amazing is it seeing this Seawolves team grow, and you being a big reason for why a lot of girls want to come to Stony Brook.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that just kind of bringing it back to the whole recruiting now, when I was being recruited, and Coach Splina talks about this all the time, that, they back then they kind of had to sell themselves for their recruits. They had to make it so the recruits wanted to come to Stony Brook, but now all the recruits want to come to Stony Brook without, all that extra stuff, that just because they see that we're being respected and, we're up there with those top teams and we're making it to the Elite Eight every year and all that stuff. And, I think that a lot of people are now buying into that whole, a bunch of Long Island kids, I could stay home and play for a top 10 team in the country and 30 minutes away from my house. That sounds great. So I think that, just adding on to that is just being a part of a team that, is just growing each year and more people want to be a part of it. I think that, that's makes it even better.
Yeah, and
how much respect do you get from your fellow Seawolves athletes in other sports? I'm sure they look at what you have done, you personally and also the whole team, you've done over these past few years. You've gone deeper into tournaments than anyone. You're consistently in it every year. And they have to look at your team as something to aspire to. And you're getting the whole university national recognition. What kind of a swagger, I guess, is the best way to describe it, does your team now have as a result of that?
Yeah, at Stony Brook, we have so many teams that support us. We have people from different teams in our stands watching us all the time, and it's kind of vice versa. We go and watch them and support them too. So it's kind of like that whole, we all support each other in the athletic department. And we support them in their goals too. So we're there to cheer everyone else on, trying to get those America East championships. The women's soccer team has gotten it a couple of years in a row now. So, just everyone supporting each other, I think, is what's helping us as athletic department. We're just getting more respected every year, and putting Stony Brook on the map as, not just a women's lacrosse team anymore, but women's soccer, basketball, and all these other sports. So I think that if we just keep growing with that Stony Brook is going to be a national power in the next couple of years for all sports across the board.
Agreed. And it's so crucial too, especially, on the women's side, where you look maybe at the start of the 2000s, and it was the men's sport getting a lot of credit. Baseball going to College World Series, the men's lacrosse program making it to the Final Four, I believe. Those incredible runs. And now, as you said, you've really seen a switch. Volleyball making it to the NCAA tournament, women's soccer, as you said, making it, basketball for the first and second time program history, winning the conference title. And obviously under Joe Spallina, Stony Brook has become the team to beat, and they've been unbeatable in the America East, winning over 50 straight conference games. So what's that? Who do you see stepping up in the future for the Seawolves, especially in women's lacrosse? Who do you think is going to be that next 1-2 tandem that Courtney and Kylie were, and yourself and Allie Candy were?
Yeah, you mean on the lacrosse team who's going to be that next? It could be anyone really. It's just we have so many great players on our team that, each year we have people that are growing. Even this year, Bridget Constantine was like my go-to girl on offense with me. And we've got Caitlin Hart. So, it really could be anyone. There's just so many great players that you never know who it's going to be, really. It's just I think every game next year, one person is going to have a great day. The next day, it's going to be someone else. It's just, that team effort that, everybody is going to be a big part of the reason why Stony Brook's on the map next year, I think, definitely.
Absolutely. So before we let you go, I do want to ask a couple questions on the pro sports side. I'm sure you've been paying attention. You spoke about lacrosse earlier. The college finals, Premier League lacrosse starting up their season earlier this week. Coach Shanichuk, as part of the Whippersnakes, got his first win of the season. Well, they don't look locally at the Islanders. They're a team that we could really make a comparison to Stony Brook to, where over the past few seasons, they've been underlooked and they've made upsets the norm, beating Pittsburgh, beating Washington in the postseason, and now against Boston. You're looking at the two best defenses in the NHL. It's similar to a lot of Stony Brook games where you have Spallina's incredible trap zone defense going up against another defensive powerhouse. So what does it take to win in games where it's defense first mindset?
Yeah, I think, our team really prides ourselves in our defense. Our offense is we've always got people that are going to score on offense on our team, but our defense is really the glue that keeps our team together every year, I think. So, just kind of that, just everything, like you said, you started talking about the Islanders. Just it takes a lot I think it's really just that team chemistry, everything that, just holding that together. I think that's a big part of that.
And offensively as well, seeing, that fourth line in particular really stepping up, the Barzell in particular really stepping up the past couple of games as well. It looks like, at least to me, this team is starting to get it clicking, and that's a good sign this late in postseason.
Yeah, I've been a big Islander fan my whole life. So, just even last year and this year, just watching them play in the playoffs has been super cool. And, watching Barzell is really, he's complete the offensive player. He's super creative. And I think that, me and my sister, we're like that with lacrosse too. So just watching people like that and on the pro level and in different sports too, just like being able to bring that from different sports and just watching that, it's super exciting. And just being able to watch the Islanders, it's so close to home for us and for me, them playing in the Coliseum and everything is so cool. And, I'm really excited to watch that.
Oh, absolutely. So are we. Again, it's so exciting. And they're going to have at least one more game at the barn. We're hoping they're going to have another series or two after that as well.
Definitely.
And before we let you go, finally, just what's next on the horizon for you? Collegially, your athletic career is done, but we know you're going back to school.
Yeah, my athletic career is over, which is super sad for me because that's been my whole life. So it's definitely going to be a different adjustment for me. But yeah, like you said, in the fall, I'm going back to school again for a master's in elementary education. So that's going to be the next step for me, becoming a teacher. And hopefully I will start coaching at a school too. High school, I definitely want to stay on Long Island. So, I'll definitely be around, and that's the next step for me.
Absolutely. I think speak for everyone where we say we're honored for you not only being here, but also, again, wanting to stay on the island. We know lacrosse as a hotbed. We know Long Island is really becoming that hotbed for lacrosse. And obviously having you staying here and, again, as you said, wanting to take the next step to coach the next generation of future star athletes. I mean, it does nothing but strengthen that, at least in my opinion, I don't know if this is yours, that Long Island is the best place for lacrosse in the nation.
Definitely. Long Island is definitely the place to be for lacrosse. It's breeding so many lacrosse players. It's crazy. And then it's really growing elsewhere too. I know my sister sees a lot of it. She's traveling across the country, putting on clinics for girls in Minnesota and Texas and things like that. So just being able to watch the sport grow, I think is really exciting. And I just think it's just going to keep getting even bigger.
Absolutely. And again, I think speak for Matt and everyone, we really couldn't ask for two better representatives for the game of lacrosse than Kylie and obviously yourself. Two of the best playmakers to ever do it on the field. Really, it goes for any sport, but especially in lacrosse. So thank you so much for taking the time out to chat with us today. We really appreciate it.
Thanks, guys. It was really awesome talking to you.
Thank you.
All right, I'll see you guys later.
Okay, Taryn Ohlmiller,
the legend,
lacrosse legend at Stony Brook,
officially
along
say that
with her
now.
Sister Kylie.
Not just Stony Brook,
Yes.
the NCAA. I mean, these two are
Overall.
1 and 2. Yeah, these two are 1 and 2 in, I believe, assists and points in program history. And among the top, well, Kylie's the top. Taryn's right there with her in points in the NCAA.
And future Seawolves Hall of Famers both. So, occasion to show up at homecoming, folks, when they get inducted, and also the next class, too. But that is the tradition that we were hoping to establish, not just in women's lacrosse, but in Seawolves sports in general, when the transition was made to Division I over 20 years ago. That the athletic programs would become a big part of the whole collegiate experience here at Stony Brook. And I can't think of a program that has made more of a contribution to that than the women's lacrosse program has so far. Because, yes, the football team had some pretty good years. The baseball team has obviously had some pretty good years. Men's lacrosse had some pretty good years. But women's lacrosse has been stealing all the headlines. And not stealing, legitimately taking.
Earning, yeah. Earning is the right word there. Because,
yes.
I alluded to earlier, baseball had a great year, 2012, College World Series. The men's team, as it's making Final Four in 2010. Cross country.
It fell a goal short.
Making the NCAA tournament and being Elite Eight in 2010.
The funny thing,
but
at
again,
that time,
just to wrap it up, the key has been consistency, and really since Joe Spallina began his coaching tenure for the Stony Brook, they're the one team in the Seawolves program history to be successful and for this long duration. It's not just a season or two. It's that we're going on 9 years now of success in women's lacrosse.
They haven't lost a conference game in 5 years.
It's video game numbers. Like, literally, it's like you're facing a hacker in a video game.
Well,
and it's real life. It's insane.
In 2010, we thought that men's lacrosse was going to go in that direction because they were a goal short of the Final Four. 2011 was supposed to be the breakthrough year, and that ended disappointingly when Tom Compatello's brother literally stole the American East Championship from a team that was the most talented the Seawolves have had before or since. But then it tapered off, and now Anthony Glardy and his crew is trying to revive that. Had a little bit of a setback this year in the America East, but
postseason.
Yeah, But the last couple of games of the regular season also hurt them too.
Right.
They're going to break through, but you know what? What you'd like to see is a Gino Auriemma, Jim Calhoun thing going on. Okay. Where both the men's and the women's teams are great. We don't have that yet. You have your Gino Auriemma, but we don't have our Calhoun yet. And that's something that the men's team needs to aspire to. And they will. They're good. They're going to be better. And I think that in many cases we liked what we saw during most of the season. And there are still some things they need to, I think, handle. Because I did not like their performance in the American East semis against Vermont. But
well, again, the big thing as well on that is for the women's side, again, you know the identity. They have incredible motion offense, and they got great trap defense. On the men's side, it really switched over that last 4 or 5 games to where you don't really know which men's team are you getting. Are you getting the 20-goal scorers, or are you getting a team that's only going to score 1 goal in 2 quarters in the semifinals? So, this, again, you're right. Coach Ghilardi has the blueprints. Now they got to execute.
Right. Baseball. Well, we are just before the top of the hour, so we talk a little bit about the fate of the America East champion, NJIT. We can also, we complained enough last week about how Stony Brook got jobbed, but they did acquit themselves reasonably well.
Yeah.
NJIT. Lewis lost 13-8 to Arkansas, a game they led early. Ended up pulling out a win against Northeastern, and then getting beat on by Nebraska 18-4. Sounds like, without having seen the game, that they ran out of pitching. Which the Seawolves had the big edge on everybody in the America East. Seawolves had a deeper pitching staff, at least in terms of the starters, than anybody else in the league. I'm not saying the Seawolves would have gotten to the Super Regional. Could they have lasted a little longer? We'll never know.
Yeah, agreed. And really, for the Highlanders, their key pitcher was, again, Jake Rappaport, who we saw as their long relief pitcher. He came in a lot to really close out those games and kind of bridge, all those players. And when he was on the mound, he did give up a lot of runs, but, Tyler Staffinger, Jared Caskell gave up significantly more runs, with giving up 10 of the 13 Arkansas scored in that loss. And in the one win, it was Jake Rappaport who got the save after Ryan Fisher got a win. But again, other than him, you had to rely on Jake Verpillat, who went 1-6 on the season, to try to etch you a win. And as you said, the guys kind of ran out there, but I thought their offense played tremendously well when all things considered. You're going up against a top 20 team in Nebraska, a great team in the Northeastern Huskies, and a top-ranked Arkansas team. I mean, they put up 8 runs on 11 hits. And they were winning a lot of that first game, too. Well, they were leading the first 3 innings against Arkansas.
Yeah, and it showed that an America East champion, whoever it might be, deserved to be there. And that's one thing that the conference can be proud of. I'm still not happy. Look, we talked about alternatives, baseball heaven, spreading it out, doing whatever they needed to do to decide a champion on the field. That weekend, in terms of weather, and you know how long I've been on this earth, has to be the worst Memorial Day weekend bad. It was so bad that Zach did the games in the studio because he didn't want to fry the equipment in the rain.
And these are home games where, the stadium's only 10 minutes away. That's how terrible the weather was. But again, there were so many other alternatives. And we don't want to exhaust the point we made last week. But it was kind of funny, though, as for Stony Brook, a lot of the Seawolf players, of course, still unhappy. They're happy that NJIT is gone. I'll say that. Yeah, you just see social media. I'm not really breaking any news there. But it is funny that to the rest of the NCAA, the Highlanders being the underdogs and getting an early lead, just getting a lead on Arkansas made them fan favorites during the weekend. So,
hey, it happened to us in Omaha.
that's right.
Everybody loved us.
Yep.
But
But
that's what happens also in the NCAA baseball tournament, other NCAA tournaments as well. As a general rule, they adopt the newcomer, the underdog. But the Seawolves in 2012 were no underdog. As LSU, Miami, Central Florida, a few other schools will tell you. As a matter of fact, the LSU coach, right after the Seawolves advanced, said this team could win it all. And you know what? Couple of breaks in either of those two games when they got knocked out. Cole Perigin doesn't airmail an easy 6-3 play. Still in that game, they get out of the inning down 2-0 against Florida State. Anything could happen. But we are a little bit past the top of the hour. This is WUSB Stony Brook, of course, and the sports section. Matt Mankiewich and Ken Fermin here until midnight. And we have another reason to be down in the dumps. The New York Yankees have been swept at Yankee Stadium for the first time since 2011, 10 years ago. It is, have they hit bottom? They're a couple games above 500, but I'm going to wind back the clock even further back than that. Now, again, completely different set of circumstances, completely different dynamic, completely different era. But my very first Major League Baseball game that I attended was actually a scheduled doubleheader back when they had them against the Boston Red Sox, Yankees Red Sox, at Shea Stadium in 1975. July 27th, to be exact. I'll get the significance for you momentarily. It was Catfish Hunter against Bill Lee in the first game, and Lee outdueled him 1-0. Both went all the way. The Red Sox jumped on the Yankees early in the second game and beat them handily, but the Yankees got shut out in both games, and Ron Guidry made his Major League debut in mop-up duty in the second game. Okay. He gets shut out in both games. 2 weeks later, George changes managers. Now, one reason why it took a couple of weeks is because the guy he wanted was Billy Martin, and he was still managing the Texas Rangers at the time. Rangers fire Billy. 2 days later, or something like that, George hires him. Fires Bill Verdon. But people say that greased the skids. Now, in 75, the Yankees had a ton of injuries. They finished only 2 games out the year before, so they figured everybody had a chance they could go all the way. But Boston pulled out to an early lead and never relinquished it. Went to the World Series that year, lost to Cincinnati Reds in 7 games. But the Yankees were in contention, but never could really get off the ground because, at least offensively, they never had a complete team. Everybody was constantly getting hurt. They put Thurman Munson in the outfield one day. So, I'm just drawing the parallel here. That was considered the Yankees hitting bottom at that point, getting shut out in a doubleheader against our Red Sox. And the Red Sox were good. Fred Lynn and Jim Rice both were in their rookie years, and both were threatening for MVP awards, let alone Rookie of the Year. I think Lynn won MVP in 75. So, they were legit. This Red Sox team was not expected to do anything. It's knocking on the door of Tampa Bay in first place. The Yankees, on the other hand, they look like the 1968 Yankees when Mickey Mantle hit 237 and the whole team hit 214.
Right. Yeah, we were talking about it during the week, but that's really the closest comparison we could get, and that's scary. That's really bad news, especially for a team that a lot of folks predicted were going to be at the top of the standings around this time. You know, if you were to say at the start of the season, the Yankees are going to go on a 10 of 13 skid where they're going to lose 10 of their last 13 games. You think you were a fool, especially having the lineup of guys like Aaron Judge, DJ LeMahieu, Giancarlo Stanton, Gary Sanchez. But none of those guys have really been able to produce during that skid.
Why are they not hitting, and what is the cause here? Is it Marcus Timms, a hitting coach? He's going to take some blame. Is it Aaron Boone? Is it putting sticky stuff on the ball, which is the latest one?
Yeah, honestly, the fact of the matter is it's all of those things. But even so, it really doesn't offer a lot of excuses, for a team that really shouldn't. Again, they're known for success. They're the epitome of success, especially in baseball. You think dynasties, you think great teams that can overcome anything. That's the Yankees. And they haven't been able to do that a lot this season. And again, going up against the team, really the Red Sox are who I think a lot of folks predict the Yankees would be. The Red Sox lead the MLB in terms of come from behind victories this season with 21. They came back in every game this series against the Yankees and were able to best them. The Yankees,
right.
And this is coming off a season where last year they had 10 of those. So in about the same time period, they're able to double the amount of comeback wins they could produce. And the Yankees, meanwhile, there's nothing going on offensively, and it's hurting pitching where you have good starting performances like we saw with Garrett Cole or Domingo Germán, and it's just wasted in a couple of pitches by the bullpen.
I have some numbers for you. Let me look this up because folks who read Newsday know who John Valenti is. Okay? And John came up with some numbers here earlier today. Actually, late last night. Okay. I'll read it verbatim, his Facebook entry. John Valenti also was Islander beat writer for a long time. But, okay. So, Yankees team stats through 59 games, not including tonight, obviously, versus the 60-game season in 2020. To this point, one fewer at bat, 97 fewer runs in one fewer game, mind you, 38 fewer hits, 19 fewer doubles, 5 fewer triples, 25 fewer home runs, 103 fewer runs batted in, 21 fewer walks, 71 more strikeouts, 19 fewer stolen bases, minus 20 points in team batting average, 227 versus 247. In other words, they weren't that great last year. Right. Minus 29 points on base, 3 for 13 versus 342. Minus 75 points in slugging, 372 versus 447. For a team OPS of 685 versus 789 a year ago. Since it's largely the same players, I have to believe the team approach and mentality has changed, since I'm finding it hard to believe all these guys suddenly forgot how to hit. This is what launch angle gets you, by the way, 97 fewer runs, 109 fewer RBIs, 25 fewer home runs, and a worse team batting average. So apparently all the science really doesn't add up. You took a team that had one of the best offenses in baseball and turned it into one of the worst offenses in baseball. It was a negative Barry Trotz effect.
Right.
Under Jack Capuano, the Islanders is in one of the worst defenses in the NHL, and Trotz turned it into one of the best defenses in the NHL with the same players. But this is what's happened with the Yankees. One of the best offenses into one of the worst with the same people.
There's, again, a lot of issues. And as you said, they're really not scoring a lot. And even they put 5 runs on the board today, and it still wasn't enough despite having 11 hits. They're 0-18 on the season when an opponent scores more than 5 runs. So let that sink in. They can't match what the other teams are producing. And again, that's with top level talent they're paying, up the wazoo for. I mean, it's just unbelievable.
What's the answer? Fire people? George is dead, folks. He's been dead for 11 years. Okay? Vito's dead, folks. Michael's taken over. Okay? So, where are Tessio and Clemenza? Yes, I constantly draw that comparison between the Steinbergs and the Corleones. But, and now everybody's comparing Cashman to Fredo. It's getting really silly. And Cashman's getting the heat. He's getting a lot of heat lately. You put this together. But, yeah, he put it together mostly last year, and they hit the ball pretty well. So it's not his fault.
Well,
I'd argue some of
it is just on the sense of the lineups themselves. I mean, let's take Giancarlo Stanton, for example. He's coming off injury, yes. But he's a guy who only plays DH. He's not a position player anymore. So why are you resting Giancarlo Stanton when you have a rest day coming up tomorrow? This is someone you're trying to get back into the swing of things, and someone who's been struggling on the season. Why would you take one of your best defensive assets in Aaron Judge and keep him as a DH when you could have used him out on the field, especially on some of those balls the Red Sox hit where they were deep? They weren't home runs, but they were deep. And ultimately in the 10th inning, it was enough. Tyler Wade's single was enough to get a couple players to cross. I'm sorry, Xander Bogaerts' single to center field to where Tyler Wade was enough to get the winning homes in. Or rather, the winning runs home. I mean, in that sense, that is an Aaron Boone problem. But at the same time, that doesn't explain the offensive side, where Aaron Judge had a great game today. He's batting .295. Really outside of him, Brett Gardner, he's holding space, batting .190. And Duhar went 1 for 5 today. It's incredible he even got the 1, to be honest. Well, that didn't matter because he got left on base 4 times. DJ LeMahieu went 0 for 5 for today and had a pair of strikeouts. I mean,
his batting average is .256 and dropping.
Yeah.
This guy was a batting champion.
No one has an OPS over 1,000 too, which is, I think, even worse, where they're getting on base, but they're not coming home. 12 runners left on base for the Yankees. Only 5 for the Boston.
And it puts you to sleep when you watch. What happened to this approach? What happened to 12 pitch at bats? For a little stretch there, last week against the Rays, they're starting to show signs of turning it around.
Agreed. And but even then, they were still playing some atrocious baseball. I mean, there was a lot of bad base running. Remember Tuesday's game? Rosarena got picked off immediately to start the game after approaching first base. And then Gio Urshela recorded the first out because he failed to advance to third on a ball that sailed to the backstop. So the Yankees they're leading the league on having players thrown out on the base paths. So these guys can't do anything right. Kike Hernandez, he came into the series, he went 0 for 27. You know what he does? He breaks the skid by hitting a tie-breaking double in the 8th inning to get the win yesterday and eventually come home to get the game-winning run. I mean, it's like watching Major League where the Indians are in that slump where anything that can go wrong does go wrong.
Now you're thinking that these guys, it can't last forever. The problem is that
it
when
looks
will
that
be
way.
Too late. Now, I will say this. I have seen Yankee teams, good Yankee teams, really good Yankee teams, have starts like this. I've seen a Yankee team go 37-37 to start the season. I've seen them at the 500 at the All-Star break and get hot in the second half and end up winning the division. It's not out of the realm of possibility. But you can't, or must not, I should say, dig yourself too deep a hole. And when you lose games like this, when you lose a series like this, people think that this stretch against the Rays and the Red Sox was crucial. But, again, that's George think. George is dead. Okay? Has been for 11 years. The Yankees don't think that way anymore. Now, I will say this, that every time the Yankees don't do something that George would have done, some beat writer or some columnist says, oh, they don't want to win. No. They also realize that during the George era, most of his hair trigger reactions had negative effects on the team. Changing managers all the time and changing PR directors and changing GMs and whatever did not help the team long term. And it wasn't until he was suspended and Gene Michael brought some stability to the front office that the Yankees started to win consistently again. And yes, he'd get blustery and stuff like that, but he shut up because he realized the more he shut up, the more we win. And then, of course, he got old. But Brian Cashman's been the general manager since 1998. 23 years and counting. Okay, he may get a plaque in Monument Park before you know it. But on the other hand, he's got one title in 20 years. And when the Yankees start turning in stinker performances like this, and when the Los Angeles Dodgers are getting all the headlines, and when Jacob deGrom is being compared to Bob Gibson's year in 1968, this is the type of situation that would have made George explode.
Oh, yeah, there'd be a lot of trades going on now. You know, on one sense, I think fans got to be happy he hasn't seen Jason Dominguez because he'd probably get rid of him to get a big star ASAP to try to fix this.
George's private PR firm, Howard Rubenstein, was his private PR guy, not the team PR guy, would occasionally throw out a release. Nowadays it would be a tweet, but back then it was a release that, you know, we will get it done for Yankee fans. George would say something. And that would be like a shot across the bow, a warning. Turn this around, heads roll. How does it operate that way?
And that, to me, that's a problem. Because really, look at what that gets you over the last 2 years. That gets you sub 500 baseball, you know, going back to last season. I'm pretty sure if you match up where the Yankees are now and where they were last season, you get a sub 500 record. I mean, these guys, they haven't looked competitive.
Well, the Yankees were over 500 last year. They're over 500 now.
That's true. But I meant more towards the latter end of it. You remember that big 3-week skid where they were still would make playoffs, but they weren't the Yankees at the start of the season where they were on a great run. You know, they're beating the Nationals, beating the Mets, beating the top NL East teams and AL East teams at that. You know, I feel like they've been on a low and they haven't been able to go back to how they were at the start of last season or even 2019 where they played pretty good baseball.
The big question now. I don't know if it's a question asked now. It's because it is early June. Let's be honest.
Right.
But is the window closing? And we have been asking this question, especially during the offseason, when decisions need to be made on guys like Aaron Judge and a few other guys, and Gleyber Torres, and Gary Sanchez, and what have you.
I thought you were going to say Aaron Boone, because number one, I think this series in particular, I think really shows, you know, his weaknesses. There's a lot of really questionable managing decisions. And even today's game, yes, the Yankees did get screwed out of a bad pitching call. There was a strikeout that was called to lead the top of the 10th, or bottom of the 10th that shouldn't have been. But you don't have Phil Nevin, the pitching coach, go out there, or the hitting coach, go out there and, you know, argue and get ejected. Aaron Boone, you're the manager. That's what you got to do. Terry Collins and Lou Piniella when he was there for the Yankees. Those two, well, Lou Piniella anywhere, those two, their highlight as manager was going out there and sticking their neck out for their guys. I haven't seen that from Aaron Boone during this skid, and that's really concerning because to me it says there's a disconnect there. And number two, if you have that disconnect, then you got to start moving guys. Is it too early? You got to really ask the questions of, is now the right time to move some of these people who aren't producing? And to me, I think the answer is yes.
Well, it's easier said than done.
That is
to
true.
get rid of somebody, you have to find a taker. That's where you're in a little bit of trouble. Who would want Gary Sanchez? And who would be willing to give you quality return? Now, who would want Gary Sanchez for free? I think a lot of teams might take a chance on him for free. You got to give up top prospects for him? Nope. Don't see it happening.
It's like that for a lot of people. 37-year-old Brett Gardner, he's not getting it done. You can't move him because no team's going to want him. And it's a guy batting under 200 on the season.
But
and Duhar,
is he any worse than Aaron Judge? No, Judge is actually back 295. He's hitting.
Well, no, I would say, now he's back to shape. I would say the question you want to be asking is he worse than Clint Frazier, who's at 185, but has a 623 OPS? I mean, for Clint Frazier, this is the guy this was supposed to be, where he takes that next step. And instead, it seems like he fell through the floor and is falling to a bottomless pit. I mean, it's not looking good for him. Or the Yankees in general, where, this is where you got to start, waking up. And it's just not happening.
Well, we're going to see. Let's take a look at the Yankee schedule upcoming. This was a tough stretch in the schedule. Tuesday. They had a nice split, split against Tampa Bay, but get swept by the Red Sox, which is always embarrassing.
And that's important because those are the top two teams in the AL East right now. And the Yankees are 7.5 games away from first.
But here we are. You go to Minnesota. They're not easy. You go to Philadelphia. They're not easy. And then you got Toronto on this big road trip. Then you get the A's at home and the Royals, and then you go back to Boston. And you're going to be facing Boston a lot over the next month and a half, leading up to the All-Star break.
Right. 19 games in total this season.
Yeah. Well, 19 games total is normal. But the bulk of them are happening over the next few weeks. So you better get it together. And obviously going on the road, change of venue always does you good. But will the Twins be that easy to take on here? The one thing I like, though, is that they'll get a little change of venue. And will it be as tough as Rays and Red Sox? Actually, potentially it could be.
I'll say Twins look good this season.
Yeah. The Twins are going to be tough.
Yeah, you said they faced Athletics as well. They're atop of the AL West at 35-26. The Twins actually have been they're at the bottom of the AL Central. They are 10 games under 500, but they did go 4-6 in their last 10, which is why I say that they'll be tough. Although the Yankees obviously had success earlier in the season against them, but no Corey Kluber.
Because the Tigers are terrible. Well, the White Sox, are the class of the Central now.
But even then, last week, the Yankees were able to sweep the White Sox.
Yeah, Detroit, Minnesota's as bad as Detroit.
It goes back to what we were saying earlier about the Sonic teams, that inconsistency. That's what the Yankees are now. Because, again, yes, they're fourth in the AL East. They're still 2 games over 500 and would be among the top 2 teams in a lot of these other divisions. The thing is, this team is not consistent. They're 2-8 in their last 10. And it's among the worst skid in the AL, with the exception of the Rangers, who are 1-9. And the Yankees team is 10 times more talented than the Rangers team. They've really got to shake it up.
Well, here's another thing that you find very disappointing too: the run differential. Tampa Bay plus 75, Boston plus 52, Toronto plus 36, Yankees minus 4. Now, the only reason that they're above water right now, that they're still 2 games over, has been their starting pitching.
Agreed.
Which has been phenomenal. It's the only aspect. Well, the bullpen too. The pitching is not to blame for this. Not by any reasoning whatsoever. This is not the problem.
Yeah, I agree. The starters have definitely stepped up. But again, you're out Corey Kluber for a period of time. And then, it's after that, you got a lot of young guys and Garrett Cole. And after that, you got a bullpen to rely on. And in situations where you think you should be seeing Aroldis Chapman, he doesn't show up in the series. And, everything just self-implodes. So they really got to figure out their identity crisis and quick. Because especially when the summer gets going, this is when you start piecing together, all right, which team is going to make it in the postseason, which team isn't. And for the Yankees, it's really up in the air right now, which is crazy considering on the other side with the Mets, they look like they can really handle a top-level competition.
I'm looking up the year by year. First of all, I'm looking for Yankees runs per game. You know how I am about the magic number being 5. I can already tell off the top of my head it's way below that. But I want to see how far below. Because...
it is very low. I don't think there's any team that scores less than 2 runs per game this season than the Yankees. That's how bad it is. It's a miracle to see them get 5 runs like they did today. Even then it wasn't enough.
It is really scary what we're looking at right now. Because, hold on, here we go. Team stats. American League is really what all I'm concerned with right now. Here we go. Team standard batting.
This is a baseball reference, by the way, for those of you at home trying to follow along with us.
Please follow along, because this is very important.
In case you think we're lying, we're not.
Okay. Runs. Hold on. Yankees second to last in the American League.
And who are they last to right now?
Over 59 games. Okay, 218 over 59. That's, you don't need to go any further than that. That's less than 4 runs per game.
Yep. And the one team worse than them, the Detroit Tigers. We're at the bottom of the AL Central right now, along with Minnesota. And I mean,
0.69 runs per game. That's disgusting. Right. You don't win.
For a team.
That's just not them.
Right.
And you know what it is? It's the Yankees before they blew it up and trade away Beltran and let Teixeira sit and everything like that for when they brought up Sanchez, they brought up Judge Glaber and all those guys. And they actually got a little bit hot in the last month of the season, this 2016. And then 2017, of course, it all gelled. But that's how bad it is. It's so bad.
They're doing worse than the Baltimore Orioles right now, who are dead last in the division and are on no means to return. Okay, they're over 10 games. Let's find the 16 games away from first place. Is 17 under 500. That's how bad they are. And they're finding more ways to score per game than New York is. I mean, it's just mind-blowing.
But that magic runs per game, Yankees worst in the American League. Now, to be fair, only one team is over 5, the Stros. Everybody else, even Toronto, is a hair under. Even Boston's a hair under, but 4.97, 4.98. Tampa Bay 4.92. Minnesota 4.62. The Angels 4.55. Royals, and the league average is 4.41. Okay. 3.69 runs per game. That's a good ERA, essentially against.
Right.
And that's a major turnoff when you're watching the Yankees basically put you to sleep. They're bad. But their batting average is not the worst. Seattle's batting 206. Yankees just third
So that's
worst.
a team made up primarily of prospects, like Jared Kelly.
Yeah.
So
Now,
really, that's the equivalent. It's not great news.
it's scary, though. How are they going to turn this around? And how much they have to turn it around.
Right. And it's incredible, again, because transitioning to the Mets, they are, I feel like, what the numbers-wise is what a lot of people predicted the Yankees will be doing. They, again, held their own against the Padres, who are among the best team, not only in the National League, but in baseball right now, 36-24, just sandwiched in between San Fran and LA for the second spot in the NL West.
But get a load of this. The Mets runs per game, they're just as bad as the Yankees, and they're batting 233 as a team. Figure that out. They're second worst in the league, in National League, at 3.65. That's actually worse than the Yankees. But you want to know the magic of the Mets?
They're getting it done in spite of it.
They're getting it done in spite of it, number one.
Right.
And they also have an ace pitcher with a .64 ERA.
Actually, to be fair to the Mets, they're missing a few games because they have about 8 games or so to make up. So
they've only played 51 games.
This
is true.
Yeah.
But their average, their per game stats are still terrible.
Yeah, they're still fighting to win, which, again, is incredible, as we saw this weekend.
Now, the Mets have more of a history of doing less with more with less. And yes, a little bit of less with more. But definitely more with less. And Mets teams historically, when they've been successful, have been geared to pitching. The 86 Mets are really an exception where they did everything well. Other successful Met teams rode arms to wherever they went. So this team is really not out of step with the history of the franchise. But how long can you ride those arms? They need to hit too. What also means it's pretty obvious what people are going to be looking for at the trade deadline, which nobody seems to have. Hitters.
Right. Now, you bring a great point is, and there's a lot of questions going down. The MLB, they passed new ruling where they're going to start enforcing umpire checks on pitchers to make sure they're not using any illicit substances on their caps, on the walls. They're going to check it 9, 10 times per game. So
let's
for the
get
Mets,
the rule down.
Right.
The rule is the only foreign substance that is allowed on a baseball is this special mud that's dug up from some hole along the Delaware River in New Jersey. Lena Blackburn's baseball mud. And the dirt in it is of a certain fineness that it takes the gloss off the ball. I used to joke because I used to be on camera over at MLB.com where the light would shine off the top of my head. Yes, half my hair is gone. But I would say I need some of that baseball mud to take the gloss off. But the baseball mud, it's legit. It comes from this one source. And not only do MLB teams get it, minor league and college teams do as well. You can order some, you go look it up. Lena Blackburn's baseball mud. Matter of fact, I should actually get them to underwrite the show. But let me just look it
we're
up.
doing advertising for them.
But the only people who are allowed to apply it are the umpires. Yep, there it is. BaseballRubbingMud.com if you don't believe me. But they've actually moved. Margate City, and they've actually, CNN did a story on them, but sure enough, it's this little hole over on the Delaware River that's the source for all the mud. And they have this exclusive monopoly, and it takes the shine off the baseball, makes the surface a little bit rougher, which is why every ball that you see hit into the stands looks a little dirty on purpose. But the umpires in their little locker room before every game, they rub up a whole bunch of these. So that's it. Now, of course, pitchers have argued that that's not enough, especially on a cold day and first 2 months of the season, what do you get? So they will put the stuff on their hands. And Gaylord Perry must be laughing. Is Gaylord Perry still alive?
King.
Well, Gaylord Perry, you remember in Major League, the old guy who put snot on the ball?
Right.
Yeah, Gaylord Perry's 82 years old, and he's hanging out and laughing at this. Because Perry would use not just traditional spit, but he put Vaseline in certain places, and we got to talk about Bardol, talk about using a couple of peppers to generate, let his nose run a little bit. Yeah, he put snot on the ball, the whole thing. Well, I don't know if Perry actually did, but that character in Major League was supposed to be a parallel of Gaylord Perry. Now, Gaylord Perry himself did pitch for the Indians in the mid-1970s. It's even funnier yet. But everybody knew he was doing it. Occasionally, a guy would get a free walk if an umpire saw a ball that looked too obviously like a spitball. But he did his whole career. And he became the oldest 20-game winner, I believe. Okay, let me get his baseball reference stats because he was over 40, pitching for Seattle. Okay, and nope, San Diego, sorry. He did pitch for Seattle later at age 43, but he was 39 years old. He went 21-6 with San Diego and won the Cy Young, by the way. I believe he's also the oldest Cy Young Award winner. But the whole point that the pitchers have been making is that they need this sticky stuff to grip the ball better and control the pitches better and not hit anybody in the head on a really cold day. Except that the hitters say, well, that means the ball can spin faster, means tighter breaking pitches, tighter sliders and curveballs, harder to hit. I think everybody's making up excuses because the pitchers have been doing this for years, and only this year does anybody complain because nobody's hitting.
Well, I think another issue, too, a lot of folks seem to be underlying, is that the league confirmed the ball sizes have changed. You remember the past couple of years, for lack of a better term, the balls have been juiced on purpose by the MLB in an attempt to kind of change how the offense produces. And for better or worse, there haven't been any better offensive years, especially in terms of home runs, than over the past couple of seasons. So as a result, the ball size decreased once again. They're trying to go back to how it was originally by making the core a bit smaller And now you're starting to see changes to where a lot of batters feel uncomfortable. A lot of pitchers as well notice there's a change and have to adjust to that. And one of the reasons they're doing it is by applying these substances. And in the case of someone like Trevor Bauer, openly admitting they're doing it and laughing to the bank with $50 million contracts, despite, using it to increase their spin rate by 500, almost 1,000 faster spins.
Well, during the trip from the pitcher's hand to the catcher's mitt, and if that's the case, yes, your curveballs will be tighter, and your fastballs will be easier to control, which is what they've been arguing. Which would you rather have? You'd rather the ball slip out of our hands and take somebody's head off? Except that it's not that extreme. It's going to be an interesting argument, but again, it's spurred by, and look, I don't care what anybody says. I just saw those stats. There's only one team in the American League that scores more than 5 runs per game. That's not normal.
No. And ironically, it's the team that got indicted for cheating. And we're not saying they're cheating again, but I mean, it kind of just
but
goes
to
to show
team
complete
that
abnormality
has built a
that the
reputation on cutting back on strikeouts.
That too.
That's a team that never changed its approach. Now, the answer, I think, is if the ball's not as juiced, shorten your swing and hit them where they ain't. I'm not saying go all the way back to the dead ball era, but stop trying to swing for the fences and stop trying to play the long game all the time. I said a few weeks ago, I don't know if you remember on Facebook, I said that I wanted to see Aaron Judge be more like Hideki Matsui. Hideki Matsui was a big power hitter in Japan, but more of an RBI man here. And he adapted his game to, one, the Yankees' needs, and two, to where he'd feel he'd be more successful against American pitching. And he had a nice career here. He didn't really get to the United States until later in his career, let's say Ichiro did. Ichiro's a Hall of Famer on either side of the Pacific. But he did have an excellent career as a Yankee, but he was not Godzilla. And I'd like to see that. I'd like to see him knock more runs in. And he's also one of the few Yankees who's hitting reasonably well. He's hovering around 295.
Agreed. And it goes for everyone, too. Like I said with the Mets. Lindor was someone who struggled a lot. I think he was trying to really have that at-bat approach to kind of go hard, aim for the fences every swing. And I think he took kind of what you're saying. He's definitely had a different swing approach, different at-bat approach. He's swinging a lot more for contact now, and it's working. He's on a 9-game hitting streak. He's been able to increase his average, and he's been a big reason why that the Mets have been able to go on, this little run and match up again against teams like the Padres. They were able to win the series at Arizona. And earlier, as you're saying too, the starting pitching of DeGrom and Marcus Stroman today have been a strong 1-2 tandem, and Taijuan Walker as well. Those three have been difference makers to really limit the impact of opposing bats. And that's been key for the Mets here as they deal with their 12 players on the IL.
Yeah, they've had a ton of injuries, and people have stepped up. That's why their stats, cumulative stats, don't look so good. But I take over the past week or so, they're much more respectable. But the Mets also have had a lot of things break their way. Let's take a look at what they're up to over the coming week, because
I know we got to switch to basketball soon as well.
Yeah, we also, yes, do we ever? But very quickly, because of course, at hockey, we haven't even mentioned the Islanders. But you know what? It seems that the teams that have the most difficulty get the most airtime. So you got the Padres coming up. Well, first of all, They're still on the road for 2 more against the Orioles. And then on Friday, they get the Padres over the weekend. Then the Cubs for 4. And then they go to Washington. And then home against the Braves, Phillies, and so on. But Padres coming back. And it's the only time you see them this year. So if you want to see the Mets, this is a good weekend coming up to do it. Okay. The Brooklyn Nets have played most of their season without all of their top 3. They had the luxury of that up until now. They blow by the Celtics in 5 games. They take game 1, despite the fact that James Harden goes down with a hamstring injury, which renders him unavailable for game 2. So now they're back to the regular season Nets, and now they're saying, well, Blake Griffin had a pretty good game in game 1. Is this an opportunity for him to step up?
Oh, he's going to have to. That we saw the bench for the Nets in game 1. When Harden went down, they had to step up. And they said it themselves that they didn't really see, them having to go reach into the depth chart and pull out guys like Mike James. But he played 30 minutes on Friday when they really didn't see him, Saturday, when they really didn't see him having that much of a role in the series. So, yeah, I think guys like him, Nick Claxton, as you said, I think Blake Griffin the most, even though he's a center and not a guard, because of his veteranship and how he performed against Boston and how he performed in game 1 as well, 18 points, the 4th most among the starters. He, him alongside with Kyrie, KD, and Joe Harris have got to get, the offense going. And it's going to be another test, absolutely. But this team, I think, looks cool, calm, and collected heading into tomorrow. And I think they have a lot of confidence that they are going to be able to accomplish this, even with a man down.
Well, of course, this is a Milwaukee Bucks team that has very high expectations, especially with a 2-time MVP in the lineup, Giannis Antetokounmpo. But I think the Nets actually have higher expectations. But
right.
But again, they're used to this. They're used to not having all their assets in place at the same time. And they have had a successful season so far.
Yeah, that's the silver lining because, for the Bucks, when DiVincenzo went down, that was for them because that was someone who they were going to rely on for shooting outside the perimeter during the postseason. And you saw that in game 1. The Milwaukee had 72 points in the paint, but they really did little outside of that. Giannis went off for 34 points and 16 of 24 shooting from inside. But, there really wasn't a lot of 3-point shooting going on from them. They went 6 of 30 overall, while Brooklyn, on the other hand, were just dominating from outside the arc. I mean, Kyrie in particular was taking so many off-balance shots that were finding their way in. It was remarkable that he was really commanding this offense from the 3-point range. And that's going to be the key, are those adjustments. For Coach Bud, you want Giannis in 40 minutes a game because when he was out, that's when the Nets went cooking. And they only needed a couple of runs when Giannis was on the bench to secure the lead for good. So for the Nets, you just want to keep that shooting up, especially from beyond the arc. You keep knocking down your threes, then they should be set to go into the conference finals in 5 or 6 games.
It really tells you, though, that you could pretty much let Giannis do whatever he wants. And if you keep the perimeter shut down, it won't matter.
Yeah, absolutely. That I think was the biggest eye-opener. Not one, I don't think we alluded to it, but we didn't know if it was going to work. Game 1 showed it would work. Now it's about how the two teams adjust for it. Again, the key for the Bucks, they got to start getting threes down. And I think the key for Brooklyn is still trying to find a way to play good perimeter defense, good interior defense, rather, because there really wasn't a lot of that going down.
Well, they have one mission, the Bucks, is to win Game 2. Obviously, you got to win whatever game's in front of you. But the important thing here is to obviously split on the road. We go over this over and over again. We liked it when the Islanders did it. So we're going to get into them in just a minute. But the Nets, on the other hand, can't afford to take their foot off the gas.
And the reason for that, too, is, again, you got a very dangerous Milwaukee team who, again, just like the Nets, they only need a 1 run, 2 runs a game to be in the driver's seat the whole time. I mean, we saw it earlier in the week with the Knicks in Atlanta. They got eliminated from the postseason because you saw that their foot was off the gas pedal, number one, and they really didn't have an answer. They weren't able to make those adjustments against the Hawks. And the Hawks really dominated with Trae Young having a superstar series. He had 29 points on 10 assists, 44% shooting from the floor, and he had another great performance yesterday in the win earlier today in the win against Philadelphia. And Clint Capella as well.
Nice game for him, too.
Oh, yeah. Clint Capella as well. He brings 12 points to the floor that the Hawks don't have with him all.
As a matter of fact, again, another team with high expectations because of Joel Embiid, the Sixers, of course, top seed. And here, now, the Hawks, I think, showed people something by stomping on the Knicks. But not a lot. If they do it again to the Sixers, first of all, they advance to the conference finals, but now you got to wonder. Because let's say it doesn't really matter if it's the Nets or the Bucks who advance. If the Hawks advance, and the Hawks do to the Sixers what they did to the Knicks, hello, you got a dark horse coming up out of nowhere.
Absolutely. You're absolutely right. And again, under first-year head coach Nate McMillan for Atlanta in this case, of course, coming from Indiana. And he had so many of these young guys, Kevin Huter as well, Bogdanovich, who came in from over the offseason. Absolutely, this would be an exceptional dark horse. They're very reminiscent of the Heat last season, where there's a lot of young names and that you didn't really expect to overcome against the powerhouses like the Lakers in this season, where they're gone. They got eliminated by the Suns, or the Mavericks who got eliminated by the Clippers, for example. So, they really, as you said, they'd be that dark horse number one. And it'd really shake up, I think, the future of the NBA, where you have a lot more of those free agents, especially as the Knicks. They have a lot of free agents this season and around $70 million in cap space, which is the most in the league, to try to get some of those players. But if a team like Atlanta really goes all the way, you could expect some free agents to go there and say, I don't want to say ring chase, but they'll think, I got a better shot going to Atlanta and get in a ring than I do to New York.
It's going to be very interesting. It always is. But see how these things play out. I am not worried about the Nets yet. If the Bucks take Game 2, then I get a little worried. But it segues perfectly.
I would say Bucks dominate Game 2. That's when you worry. But until then,
yeah,
the Nets have been doing what the Nets been doing all season. That's controlling the floor.
But it segues perfectly to the Islanders, who have turned the series around against the Boston Bruins. Came very close to blowing it. And my biggest complaint about the Islanders up to this point was that they have not come up with a solution to losing Anders Lee. They can keep your defense up enough to make small one-goal leads stand. That's great. But Matt Barzal had a turnaround game last night. And he was, just by being in the middle of everything, whenever the Islanders were crashing the net, he was there, right in the middle of it. And it paid off big time for him.
Yeah, and that wasn't easy, Matt. I mean, it was an outstanding night in goal for Tuukka Rask. He had 30 saves on 32 shots. And the final score was 4-1, but it was a lot closer to that during the entire game.
Two empty netters.
Exactly. The real score is probably closer to 2-1 the big thing, as you said, Matt Barzal really stepped up. We saw it in the last game where he was able to tie it in the third for to make it a 1-1 game. But this, as you said, last game, he really performed well. He got it in the middle of everything. He did a great job, really just playmaking, not so much necessarily perfectly assisting, but he was getting shots out in the open for his teammates to rebound and score. And that was the difference maker. And it was a couple of really close goals that they were able to sneak through to Garas. And again, for the Isles, they didn't even get a lead of their own until 7 minutes left in regulation. But when that happened,
right.
I mean, you couldn't ask for more picture perfect defense than what you got there. They didn't allow any shots on goal in the final 6 minutes of the game.
And that's what the Islanders can do best. And that in the playoffs makes all the difference in the world. Because playoff goals, they're almost all garbage goals. They're not finesse goals. Mm-hmm. And that's an opportunity that the Islanders can take advantage of. Now, another series I'm looking at right now, look at those Habs.
Oh, yeah.
They just took it to the Winnipeg Jets. They're up 3-0 on them. So,
and I'd be stunned if they don't sweep them, to be honest. I mean, ever since really the beating the Leafs, upsetting the Leafs, who on paper had, one of the best offense, arguably outside of Tampa in the NHL, to upset them again, knock out the Leafs in the first round for another Stanley Cup playoff series, it's incredible, number one. But number two, that impacted the outlook of the next series as well, Matt, because with the Habs with the upset, the North now is the fourth seed, meaning they're going to face the West seed in the next round. So instead of the East having to battle the West, they're going to battle the winner of the Lightning and Hurricanes. So the Isles move on. You could see a rematch of last season's conference finals, or you could see two outstanding young teams in New York and the Hurricanes.
It's going to be a fun June, I think, for all of us.
I'm loving it way more than last year when we were miserable trying to fill 2 hours of nothing going on. I'm so glad sports are back.
Many thanks to all the Stony Brook players who joined us during that stretch. Absolutely. Because we were able to talk about, past glories and stuff like that, which was fun. But you're right. No new sports content at that time, and just thinking about possibly having an arrangement where we have not seen in this market since 2003 a basketball team and a hockey team in the finals.
That's right. Incredible.
That's going to be fun. Now, of course, in 2003, it happened in the same building. In 1994, it happened in the same building, the Knicks and the Rangers. But in both cases, only the hockey team won. But that's talk about, because I was in the middle of those, well, not 94, 03 definitely. Right. Because I'm working for MLB.com and just starting with them. And also, when I'm done with them, I'm going straight to the Meadowlands to watch the Nets in the finals and the Devils in the finals. That was a crazy 3-week span. But something to look forward to. And I'll tell you something. I've had some great the press box is still socially distanced, so they put me with the photographers. I didn't mind. I had a better view.
I was going to say, you got a heck of a show as well, especially at those double games.
Yeah, but hey, the longer we go in the old barn, the better. And I'm sure UBS Arena is going to be beautiful, but we're all going to miss it.